Good morning. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this morning's hearing. It's a request to rezone property to a conventional zoning district. The board recently amended the Land Development Code to make decisions on conventional zonings, final with the hearing examiner. So following the conclusion of this hearing, I will review the testimony and the evidence, and I will prepare a final decision. The date is March 9th. The case number is REZ2022-00024. Do we have any members of the public present?
No.
No? Okay. Well, then I'm going to cut right to starting the hearing. No more introductory remarks. All testimony and evidence that I take during these hearings must be accepted under oath. Therefore, if you intend on speaking on the record, I ask that you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you enter into the record will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, I'm ready to begin.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, my name is Richard Aiken. I'm an attorney with Henderson Franklin here in Fort Myers, Florida. I'm here this morning on behalf of the applicant in case number REZ2022-00024. I have with me this morning on behalf of the applicant, Alan Freeman. Mr. Freeman is here. I also have Jim Inc. Mr. Inc. will be giving the bulk of the presentation here this morning. I expect that you will also hear some comments from Mr. Freeman at the conclusion of Mr. Inc.'s presentation. The applicant did submit a 48-hour notice in connection with this matter, noting that there were no issues with the staff report, and the applicant is in agreement with the staff recommendation of approval in this matter. Also, before we get started, I do have a copy of the applicant's PowerPoint presentation for you this morning.
Okay, thank you. I'll mark this as applicant Exhibit 1.
No, hold on here. Right now.
There we go. So just to give you a brief outline of what we're going to go through this morning, we will go through the request and outline the existing conditions that are on site with regard to the property at issue, as well as the existing conditions that are adjacent to the site and the existing zonings adjacent to the site. We will also discuss how the request complies with the Land Development Code and the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. As you can see from the aerial that's in front of you here, the property is located on US 41. It's just south of Babcock Road. It consists of 23.61 acres, and it is within the San Carlos planning community. This is a request for a conventional rezoning, as you mentioned, from Ag 2 and C1 to C2. The property is in the urban community future land use under the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. It is also entirely within the mixed use overlay. If approved, the rezoning would allow for a mixed-use development of multifamily and commercial uses consistent with the C2 district. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Inc.
Morning. For the
Ariel,
record, James
I did
Inc.
a site check down here earlier this week before the hearing, and there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
Parcels to the north, anyway.
Yes, there is with the case that I believe we did up north with the hybrid warehouse. So as Richard said, we're here to rezone this property from AG2C1 to C2. Walking through the existing conditions, we have these listed, but I wanted to move forward to just keep this here as I talked about it, so you could look at what's there. The existing conditions, you can see that is the subject property has AG2 on 41, and then kind of a uniquely C-shaped C1 on the backside of it, which is, you know, not normal, a little odd. But this all was platted and was worked on back in 1970s. And the commercial business to the east, which is C1 zoning, was platted in 1972, probably to consider adding on to the back and coming back towards 41 when they did that back in the 70s. The residential multifamily to the north, which is RM2, was also platted at the same time, different plats but at the same time, and that's RM2 single family on the north side. North of Babcock, which is the road to the north, is that hybrid storage that you saw when you went out there, which is the man caves, the new district. Over on the other side of 41, to the northwest, is the Harbridge View. It's a commercial plaza, and then that's the entrance to the Harbridge. On the other side, you can see the lake and the start of the single family. To the south is a activity center with various commercial uses. So the parcel itself is ideal for doing a commercial type C2 intense infill type project. It is in the urban land use category. It is, I'll just stay here. It is in the mixed use overlay, which we try to do, and it's encouraged to do conventional zoning in those cases, and that's why we asked for the C2 over the whole property to meet that part. The services are all there, Lee County Utilities, the Sheriff's Department, there's schools in the area, and there is an active development order for this. In this case, we know what the intended use is, and that's for a multifamily site that is in review, waiting for your determination if this is an appropriate use that goes in there.
And that's for the back portion of the property with commercial anticipated for the front, or is
Yes.
it all multifamily?
I don't think it's all multifamily. No, it's got commercial in the front, which
But the
would be.
DO is for the multifamily in the back?
Yes.
Okay.
So the multifamily in the back is on the C1 portion.
And the DO has already been issued?
No, it's awaiting on applicant. There's some comments. But it is well underway and well in, down that road. Water management district's been applied for, the ERP for the stormwater, so that's in review. That's been engineered and moving forward on those aspects of it. I mean, the properties in the San Carlos district, as it says there, that there's sufficient land for this use, there's sufficient capability in this district for the multifamily and the commercial. It's contiguous and compact, which meets objective 2.1. It's on a major arterial, US 41. It has access to Babcock, which is a minor collector in that aspect. The fire department, the sheriff's department, we have Lee-Tran bus route within a quarter of a mile, bus stop within a quarter of a mile, so that, it meets that requirement. There's already an existing sidewalk, which we would have to do in the land development code if it wasn't there, but it's already got the transportation. So as an infill project, this has all the services completely surrounding it to support the request. It's in the San Carlos Planning District. As I said, the allocation table, the ERP is applied for. That's just some going through and meeting all the policies. Staff always does such a great job in their staff report that I usually defer to them and say, they go through the policies, they're consistent with the Lee plan in their determination, and we feel that it's exactly the same way. So the property goes through. We've done the nutrient analysis. We're going to do the water quality. That part of the application is completely, consistent with the South Florida rules and hands-on. So that's there. The residential to the north with appropriate buffers. If it's multifamily, we put in a type B buffer. It will be consistent with the land development code. Conventional zoning, we're not asking for any deviations. We can live within the rules of the land development code as they are written, and as it's already going through the process. So what we ask for you today is a finding that C2 is an appropriate use, consistent with the LEED plan, it's consistent with the Land Development Code, and a recommendation for approval.
Okay, thank you
With
very
that, I'm
much.
for questions.
I don't have any questions. I feel as though the staff report and applicant's narrative were well prepared. And I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to speak, or did you want staff first? Put mine on. Good morning. For the record, I'm Peter Blackwell with the zoning section for Lee County. Today's hearing, REZ 2022-00024, is on the 7 parcels that comprise the subject property at the southeast corner of Babcock Road and US 41. Staff finds that the applicant's presentation was accurate and pretty comprehensive. So once we do the overview, I will pretty much just go straight on to the criteria and give our analysis. Okay. Yes, the request is on 23.61 acres from commercial C1 and agricultural AG2 to commercial C2. We've seen the shape of the parcel, and it is currently located in the urban community future land use category. However, there is a pending comprehensive plan amendment for redesignating it as well as the surrounding area to the central urban future land use category. This is in addition to the pending DO on the back end of the project.
What is the status of that pending amendment?
I believe it is still in staff review at the moment. Brandon Dunn, I think, is working on that one. Let's see. We are also located in the mixed-use overlay. This is very important, as I will get to. And the applicant gave the surrounding uses very well. And as you can see, the property is, for the future land use map, in a very large sea of urban community. There we go. The comprehensive plan amendment will cover this parcel, this area around the intersection, as well as up here. So it is it's not confined just to the subject property. Okay, for our review criteria. Compliance with the LEED plan. Now, this conforms with both the existing future land use category, for it is the urban community embodies a mix of commercial and or residential and non-residential uses. So having a mixed layout of commercial at the front and residential at the back is perfectly acceptable. And the same can be said of the central urban. The big change for our purposes is that central urban has a higher residential density. It can go to a normal maximum of 10 units an acre, as opposed to central urban or urban communities normally maximum 6 units per acre. So that could affect the intensity of development on the property. But in either case, staff has no issue with the category. This location is suitable for commercial activity. As the applicant showed, you referred to it as infill development, which is accurate, as we have the commercial node to the south of it at the intersection of Sanibel and 41, and the currently developing property to the north, which is becoming commercial. The full range of utilities are available to the property, and is not considered an encroachment of inappropriate use. because it is fronting on US 41, is expected to be part of that commercial corridor. There's only one location along its perimeter where it abuts residential uses, and that's on the north with the duplex community on the north side of Babcock Road. Well, actually, on both sides of Babcock Road. And the LEED plan does contain sufficient regulations to buffer the interaction between those two. And in particular, any particularly odious uses as defined by the LEED plan or by or LDC would have their own special buffers that would have to be applied, such as like 34-3005 for open storage, things like that. So staff finds that the LEED plan and LDC can address that issue sufficiently. This represents a well-planned commercial development. Now, traffic impacts are one of the major issues. However, for a conventional rezoning, we do not require a traffic impact statement, and those impacts will be addressed through the development process or the development order. We did not consider this to be creating premature development because of the nature of it being infill development, so we're okay with that. Okay, compliance with the LDC. Everything that the applicant is doing is conforming to the standard procedures for the LDC and for LEED plan amendments. Applicant is not currently seeking any variances. If they do have to seek the variance, they'll be required to follow proper procedures then too. The potential uses in the C2 zoning district are appropriate for this location. It's a very intense category, and it's rezonings to the C2 zoning process are only permitted now in the mixed-use overlay, which is why it's so important that they're in it now. Because, like I said, C2 is very intense. It allows a great deal of commercial uses, including some of the more intense uses, such as commercial centers and such. Let's see, we have the pending CPA and DOS cases on that property, and all of those will also be required to follow the standard county procedures. Everything about this is complying to the Land Development Code. The compatibility with the surrounding area. As mentioned, we are in a commercial corridor. They have no problem with the abutting along US 41 north and south. The rear area to the east is also zone C1 and is generally in automotive trades, such as repair shops. And as such, that's not an issue. And as mentioned earlier, the one place where they might be considered to have slight conflict, the duplex development to the north, we do have sufficient means to assure that it won't be incompatible.
So you're saying that the heightened buffer and setback requirements for particular uses would trump the leniency of buffers and setbacks that are allowed in the mixed-use overlay?
Yes, anytime that's a specific item, such as 3005, which requires an 8-foot tall visual fence between commercial or open storage and residential, that would still be applied even though they're in the mixed-use overlay.
Okay, because normally in the mixed-use overlay, it's a much more relaxed setback and buffering standard is available to the developer. Not that they have to take it, but you can anticipate that they likely will utilize less intense buffers, less setbacks.
Well, normally under this situation, they would be required to have a C or F buffer between commercial and multifamily residential, but you are correct that it's relaxed in the mixed-use overlay.
So viewing this application, this request to C2 in the lens of the pending comp plan amendment and its location in a mixed-use overlay really greatly increases the potential density and intensity that can be on this site, because in the mixed-use overlay, as you know, you can count the entire acreage of the site when calculating residential density, even though a portion of the site may be ultimately developed with commercial. So we're talking about a difference of 6 units per acre versus 10 units per acre, utilizing the entire site acreage. Did you consider that in preparing your staff report and your recommendation of approval?
Yes,
Okay, understanding that the density could significantly increase by 50% even on
Right.
that parcel.
Right.
Same thing with the commercial, the size of commercial centers that we understand are anticipated in the urban community are on a smaller scale than what we would expect in central urban. So to the extent that the parcels in the front that are left out of this development order for residential will develop with commercial uses, that the intensity of those uses will be far greater once the comp plan amendment is adopted.
yes,
And you considered that in your application
Yes, ma'am.
review? And still find it consistent and
Yes.
compatible with the area?
yes, ma'am. The, being on US 41 is a great advantage for the applicant, because that is where we expect to put our most intense uses. And access via Babcock Road, or as DOT may grant, to Florida DOT may grant to US 41, will take into account the traffic generated by the greater uses. All righty, for our next criterion is sufficient access. As I just said, they do have the potential to have an entrance located on US 41 as determined by Florida DOT, because it's state highway, US highway.
Does the pending DO show an access to 41 at this time, or is the main access serving the residential off of Babcock?
The site plan that I've seen has access off of 41 and off of Babcock, with a reverse frontage road between the commercial and the
All
residential.
right, so FDOT has in fact improved an access to 41?
I don't know if they've approved it yet. So that is what they're
Conceptual.
intending. Yeah, so. Yeah, and that's what I was about to say next, so. Again, transportation facility impact, no TIS currently required. And that could be something that does affect the nature of their development, but that would involve the development order process, not the rezoning process. Right now, the mix of uses permitted by C2 is acceptable to the zoning staff. Under the environmental impact, property has been previously cleared. They found no protected species or native vegetation. This will also be part of the local DO review, how they address specific requirements such as open space and native habitat, as well as the aforementioned landscape and buffering requirements. For urban services, they do have full water and service available. Fire and EMS are only about 5,500 feet away as the crow flies on Sanibel. But they do abut Lee-Tran Route 240, right on US 41. And there is a stop just slightly to the north of their property on US 41. And based on the previous analysis of the criteria, staff recommends approval of the request to rezone the subject property from AG2 and C1 to C2 commercial. Any other questions?
I don't, thank you very much.
Madam Hearing Examiner, Mr. Freeman would like to make a few comments. I'll ask him to come up now.
Good morning.
Good morning. As with most of the cases that I bring before Lee County, I always think that this is a beautiful development with no problems at all. So I just wanted to discuss a little bit of the history. If somebody can bring up the aerial.
Faster than me.
And I just want to make some remarks that may help with an explanation of what we're doing and why. Not that it's critical to this, but I think that the presentation by our consultants and the presentation by staff basically indicates that this is consistent with the surroundings and compatible with development in the area. But I have been doing this a long time. Basically, the story about this site is that my father and uncle developed San Carlos Park. So they developed an initial development of 240 acres that became like 2,200 acres, 8,000 homes. And as a second phase in San Carlos Park, they put in Constitution Boulevard. Constitution Boulevard had a grand entry with arches. My father was sort of a futuristic kind of guy, and based on when he did this, people would probably say that wasn't going to work, and he was told many times that it wouldn't. But that is the entry to the golf course edition of San Carlos Park. That's where they initially put in a sewer treatment plant. They put in a water plant. And so they envisioned that the septic tank world was going to change, that urban services would be in this area, and now they are in this area in a pretty good degree. That was a time of a 2-lane highway, and now it's a 6-lane highway. In the late 70s, early 80s, our family began to acquire this property as part of several parcels. So basically, we acquired everything at the corner of Constitution Boulevard back to Constitution Circle, not only the property that's being zoned now, but the shopping center that's shown there, McDonald's is there, and all the property behind the shopping center that's vacant. So we did an acquisition of multiple parcels, probably 8 parcels, that we put together, envisioning this as sort of the urban center entry to San Carlos Park. San Carlos Park was originally designed as a retirement community for northern factory workers. It's a more affordable community, but it was at the time cut into a lot of little lots, a la Lehigh Acres, Cape Coral, and there weren't really commercial centers designed. In the late 90s, we constructed that shopping center anchored by a Winn-Dixie, brought in McDonald's, put in the reverse frontage road, the entry on 41 that's north of Constitution Boulevard, and we envisioned a project that would have one more entry in the center between that and Babcock Road. Babcock Road was in the northwest edition of San Carlos Park, previously mentioned, and the commercial edition is just to the east. It did not extend to US 41. So we made a deal with an adjacent property owner, we swapped some property, and we paid to extend Babcock Road to 41. The significance of this is that that roadway network is not only access to 41, which it didn't previously have as good access. It's got a collector on the north, collector on the south, and 41 in the front. We do not typically bring things in unless we have an idea of what we're going to do there. We were going to extend that shopping center and build more commercial. The market basically at this point doesn't demand that. What it demands is multifamily. And so we're trying to round out some housing offerings in that area. If we extend that reverse frontage road through this property to Babcock Road, we'll have some commercial out parcels in the front, a multifamily development in the back. We've done several of these in the Three Oaks area, and that net property in the back is a perfect, about 17 acres that typically fits about 250 units. So that is what we anticipate as housing there, and we put this out to the market. We received multiple offers from companies around the country, and we have an Indianapolis developer that's going to do an apartment project there, or at least that's what we anticipate. The other issues there, I mean, obviously it's been talked about that it's, there's a comp plan amendment coming forward that is to deal partially with the density. The transportation system, we believe we will get that access on 41. It will be a right-in, right-out in the middle of the project that will enter between the commercial out parcels as the main entry into the apartment complex. But we do need multiple entries for fire and other purposes, so we want to have that additional entry to Babcock Road, and also give them circulation back to not only the convenience of the commercial that's right next to it, so they don't have to go out on major roads, but also there's a traffic light at Constitution Boulevard, so that'll make some turning movements work a little bit simpler. Again, level of service here on Babcock and 41, from what I've read, is level of service C, so we don't expect that anything is stressed in that area. It's been discussed that it's in the mixed-use overlay, so this seems, again, consistent and compatible. And I think that's basically not only what is shown there, but what the intent is to bring this to the current date and fill a need there that we believe the market is telling us. We would like to thank staff for going through our application in a thorough manner and looking at the different conditions there. I'd like to thank Mr. Inc. and Mr. Aiken for their wonderful service. I'd like to say I miss Mr. Schropp, so if nobody else misses him, I miss him. And I would like to thank Sharon Rayback at Quattrone, who sits in the background and puts all of this information together, so hopefully we can explain it well and get a positive result. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, either about what they presented, what I presented, or any other items.
Oh, I thank you for the clarification. It was very helpful to me to understand a little bit about the history.
Thank you. It's the benefit of being older.
That's what they tell me.
That concludes the applicant's presentation. If you have any additional questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
I don't have any questions. Does anybody feel the need to make concluding remarks? I'll be happy to hear them. Otherwise, I'll close the record, and I anticipate releasing a decision shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.